We'd all be very entertained.
Yeah.
Right?
When you're ready. Are we good? All right. Want to talk to you guys a little bit about haiku, which is something that's pretty close, near and dear to me. Haiku brings up a lot of imaginary things in your head. You talk about people in kimonos sitting down by a river somewhere under cherry blossoms with, calligraphy pens rolling by. It's about as in step with our modern time space here as jousting or Wheel of Fortune, basically, when you think about it for most parts. But for me, haiku was poetry I didn't really know anything about. I am a poet, been published a couple of times. I write poetry and have since I was probably 7, but to me, even though I know poetry pretty well, haiku was always a weird thing. Didn't really know anything about it. I started getting into studying it a little more and realizing what it was about. Got in some writing groups that sort of led me to where we are. What I'd like to do for you guys is kind of dust off what haiku is, because I don't know how many of you think of haiku as anything you'd even get involved with, but when you start looking at haiku, you have to kind of start where it came from. It came in Japan originally, obviously. The name was actually Haiku when it started. It was the very beginning of this long chain of poems called renga. A master would write the first one. His students would chime in after on the same theme, and you might have 40, 50, 60 poems all attached to that same central theme. But it all started with the haiku or the hoku. That became the art form. You were the artist if you could start the topic the best. This gentleman here, Basho, used to be a samurai. So he was your typical guy in the kimono swinging his sword around. Put it all down and decided to be a poet. If you look at his poem here, to an old pond, a frog leaps in, and the sound of the water. The point of Japanese haiku was to take an observation of a bare moment in time and capture as few words as you possibly could. And make it as impactful as you could at the time. So if you're there reading that, you instantly feel like, I just watched the frog hop there. That was the whole point. That was it. Simple beauty. That's what Japanese is all about. Now, the thing about American haiku that is a little bit different, and actually the most surprising thing about it is how relevant some of these things are. In American haiku, actually, step back. This is White Silence Falling by Peter Galen Massey. And if you look at it, the structure is obviously different. We pay attention to the structure here in American haiku a little more than they do in Japan, and they did. Now they do it like this. White silence falling, soft as dandelion heads, cold as easeful death. There is a lot going on in those 3 lines. And that is the whole point, to make you think about a single moment in time in as few words as possible and really capture it in your head to make you go over it and over it and over it, basically, as an echo, till you come up to an idea of what it's all about. The nice thing about some of our poems these days, and actually according to the Poetry Foundation glossary, poetic terms, haiku was not populated in the West until the early 1900s. So we come a long way since we first started it. Western poems and poetry, haiku, were created like this on our own form. Japanese didn't look like this originally, but Western haiku, just to talk about it a little bit more real quick, it's 3 lines, always, for the most part anyway. 17 syllables broken up into 5, 7, and 5, which sounds pretty simple, but if you try to put it together yourself, it takes a little while to actually make it work. It doesn't rhyme. It's not like your typical English poem where you have lines, or Dr. Seuss that rhymes every word, or limericks that rhyme along the way. It doesn't quite work that way, but it does focus on that bare prose. So here's the description of Western haiku by Haruo Shirano, who's a Japanese cultural literal authority. He explains that Western haiku in English is a short poem, usually written in 1 or 3 lines, that seeks out new and revealing perspectives on the human and physical condition, focusing on the immediate physical world around us, particularly that of nature, and on the workings of the human imagination, memory, literature, and history. Essentially, that means that we are working towards quiet, bare experience in poetry, designed to work around one moment. So, if you look, and more examples of Peter Galen Massey. Actually, that's what we'll talk about in a second. But Peter Galen Massey wrote these 2 as well. I focused on these because of the season that we're in. But these are the different kinds of ideas that you can create in a small space with haiku. The rushing night clouds veil and unveil in silence the city's cold stars. You're there. You're with this guy in the city park somewhere watching winter come down in New York. The clarity of winter dusk, the still sharp air, and one bright blue star. You just stepped outside, maybe you're walking your dog like Sam was, bam, there's the first star of the evening in the winter, and you go, I'm going to write a poem. It's right there. Now, Robert Frost, which I did want to show you, also wrote a poem about winter. This is why I want to put this up for contrast. This is what a lot of people think about as poems when they think about what we do in English poetry. I won't go through the whole thing, but you probably have all read at least some of this that ends up with the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep miles to go before I sleep. This is a winter scene in beautiful prose, but traditional Harvard-style English. Peter Galen Massey pretty much did the same thing in the works he did with 3 little lines in each poem, and you're just as much there in winter in those poems as you are here. Is one better than the other? No. When you look at something like this, how do you compare them between the two? Do you feel the winter in both? You absolutely do. Sometimes it's about snapshots. And just to finish up, one thing I want to talk about is the fact that haiku, we talk about it a lot here, or I do, kind of a poem. But it actually is something that's international. We have societies all over the world that still deal with it. HNA is one of them. They list probably 10 or 15 places worldwide that deal with haiku, have conventions, bring things together, put them together. And the biggest thing about it is haiku is living in the places that we are. I told you, I'm a poet. I'm not a hugely spectacular one, but haiku is one of my faves now. It never used to be. I really want to encourage you guys to do this. We talked about where it came from, how it got to where it is, where it is now, and how it can be relevant to where you are in your everyday life. These are 2 of mine. Actually, I just wrote them off the cuff probably 6 days ago. Sitting on the shelf, bottled memory and dreams, dust slumbers quiet. We all have things that we want to do, things we'd like to have done that we put on the shelf and don't get to, and sometimes they collect dust in our heads. That's what that's about. This one down here is my own winter poem, Winter Thaws with Haste. Hope lifts willow branches high, March dreams of new spring. Not in Maine, but for most of us, spring is on the way at some point in time. But I would encourage you guys to look up haiku. You may never write one of your own, but it's definitely an art form that's living, breathing, surviving today. It's worth looking into, and it's just a great way to take a quick snapshot of what we see, bottle up in a beautiful package, and keep it for us all the time we do on our phones. That is it in a nutshell. Any questions, you guys? Have any of you ever read haiku your own? Have you ever tried to write one?
Yes, in high school. I failed
You did?
miserably.
Okay. This should be off camera, but I do actually teach haiku classes. They're really cheap. Get a hold of me. No,